everyone. I thought today I'd show you some techniques that I use when making flying geese. I'm going to show you how to make the traditional flying geese. I'll tell you why I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of that and how to correct that if that's the way you like to make them. I'm going to show you this new tool that we got in called the Flying Geese Block Lock. Some of you may remember I love the half square triangle block lock, and I'm liking this one just as much. I'm also going to show you how to use the wing clipper. Wing clipper comes in wing clipper 1 and 2. It's a great tool for squaring up or perfecting your flying geese. Traditional, using the block lock to square it up. I'm going to teach you how to make 4 at once, and then we'll square those using the wing clipper. Okay, so the first step for making flying geese for most of the techniques that I'm going to show you today is we take the small square, which is referred to as the air or the sky, and we have to mark the center from point to point. All right, so now we're ready to sew our flying geese. You'll notice I have my straight stitch plate on. I love to sew with the straight stitch because I get a little more accuracy in my straight stitching. I also have one of the feet that I really like, the 20D. It has the open toe so I can see my line here. And I'm going to start with a leader and ender, or what some people call bunny ears. The reason I start sewing on that is because it grabs my fabric, and so I don't end up with any bunching at the beginning of my stitching. So when you use a leader and an ender, you just sew off your fabric and right onto your next piece. You'll notice that when I sew this line, I like to stay on the side that is into my seam allowance. So in other words, the part that I'm going to cut away. Because if you deviate at all, it's going to be in the part you're going to cut away, and hopefully this way your goose won't become short. Actually, the air won't be short on your goose. When I get to the end, I can either take another leader and an ender, or I can take my original leader and ender and just sew right off of it. So now that we've sewn one piece of our air onto our goose, we're going to trim it 1/4 of an inch. And you're going to do this whether you do it the traditional way, the block lock way, or the wing clipper way. So we just cut this off. Next time we go to the sewing machine, I'm going to show you what you can do with your cutoffs if you're a person who likes to do things with scrappy. Okay, so now that we have trimmed off our excess triangle part, we're just going to take our iron, set our seam, and iron our triangle, which is the air or the sky of your goose. So it looks just like that. Whether we're making the flying geese the traditional way, or we're going to use a block lock ruler or a wing clipper to trim it up, the process is the same. So we've sewn on our one square, we're going to sew on the second square. You'll notice I drew a second line this time, only so I can show you a fun little thing to do with our cutoff triangles. So I have my normal stitching line that you would do for a flying geese. I drew another line 1/2 inch away. So all I did to do that is I just took one of my wonderful tools and drew a line on both sides. All right, now let's go sew. Now remember how I told you I was going to teach you how to get a half square triangle out of also making flying geese? That's where we're going to stitch on this second line right now that we drew. Okay, remember how on this one I said if we sew this extra line, we can get a half square triangle for those of you who love to do scrappy quilts? Here we go. We're just going to cut down the middle, just like we did if we're making a multi-block. And look at this. I have a half square triangle already sewn. I can add it to my scrap bin, and when I want to make that scrappy quilt, I have half square triangles sewn. I've wasted no fabric. So this was the Flying Geese unit that I made using the traditional method, where you have your measurements exactly to what your block should measure. Does it work? Yes. However, if you look really, really closely at my unit, I'm probably a 32nd of an inch off on this one piece of the air. To me, it works. I can put it in my quilt. It'll be in a seam allowance, no big deal. But I like perfection. So to get perfection, add a 1/4 of an inch to the measurements before you cut out your pieces, and then use one of the following tools that I'm going to show you how to use, either the block lock ruler or the wing clipper. So now I'm going to take that oversized unit that we made, and I'm going to take my block lock ruler. Remember, the block lock ruler has these grooves in it. So we're going to put our seams into those grooves. That's what's going to keep it perfect. And then we're just going to trim all the way around our ruler. And we will have a perfect 2 1/4 by 4 1/2 inch Flying Goose unit when it's done. You'll notice I love the mats that spin for this reason. I don't have to reposition anything. I can just spin and cut. Now I have a perfect unit. The wing clipper, you'll notice, has various sizes of Flying Geese that you can make. The wing clipper also comes in 2 different rulers. This happens to be wing clipper 1. So it has full inches and 1/2 inches. Wing clipper 2 has full inches and 1/4 inches. So I'm going to line this up with the V that's created between my seams here, and I'm going to trim off the right side and the top. I'm going to turn my mat, and I'm going to alter my ruler again, and I'm going to match up that V up here again. And now I'm just going to trim my other 2 sides. And I have a perfect Flying Geese block. Four at once for Flying Geese, we have to do the first step a little bit differently. We're going to take either of these tools. This one's the Fons and Porter one. This one is the Quilter's Magic Wand. What it is, it's a 1/2 inch wide, and it has a line down the center. You're going to take that line down the center and match it on your diagonal point to point, and you're going to draw the line on both sides. So now we're ready to start sewing our multi-goose sample. You'll notice I have 2 squares pinned on here. So I'm just going to sew this straight line through both squares. I'm going to turn the block, and I'm going to sew down the other way. Now that we've sewn our 2 squares on to make our multi-geese block, we're going to take a tool, can be your magic wand, it can just be a ruler, whatever, and we're going to cut down the middle of these 2 sewn lines. It's a 1/2 inch section, so you're just going to take your ruler and trim 1/4 inch. So that now we have 2 pieces like this. We're going to do the same thing that you do on a traditional. We're just going to iron the sky away from the goose. So you'll have a piece that looks like this. We're going to take one of those 2 remaining triangles that we have. You line it up in the opposite corner down here, and it will stick up in between your V's over here. We're just going to pin this on, and then we're going to go and sew both those lines just like we did before. Now remember, this is only 2 geese. Here's my other half of that. So I'm going to do the same thing, and by the time I'm done with this, I will have made 4 geese out of 1 block of fabric. On our multi-geese, we're just going to do like we did last time. We have to sew both sides of these lines. You'll find a technique that works for you, whether it's the block lock ruler, the wing clipper, the traditional method, or if you find that you still struggle with these, there's always paper piecing flying geese. I know these aren't flying geese, I didn't have any, but they do make them, and we're gonna start to carry a few. So I hope you enjoyed my video today. Thanks for watching.